Greetings everyone, you should have just finished your exam number 2. That was a lot of information to learn because substrates, our growing media, and also fertilizers, managing our mineral nutrition program, are just a really important part of our cultural program in greenhouse crops. And that's whether we're growing vegetables in a greenhouse or ornamentals in a greenhouse. Those are sort of two very, very important parts. And they interact with one another, as you probably saw. They're sort of two legs of sort of a stool, where substrate or growing media, fertilizer, mineral nutrition is another. And now you're going to start sort of what I think of as sort of a third leg of a stool, and that is water quality and irrigation. Some of what you're going to learn in this unit are just irrigation systems, and many of these are going to relate back to the benching unit that you had much earlier, because in many cases we combine the benching surface with our irrigation systems, such as with ebb and flood benches or flood floors. So you'll have heard some of this before. So sort of half of this, I just want you to learn and understand these different kinds of irrigation systems, what they are they overhead, are they sub-irrigation, how do they operate, pros and cons of those systems. The other half relates to water quality issues, the water we're going to use to irrigate our crops, to make up our fertilizer solutions. Water quality is a very big deal. Water quality affects the chemical properties of our substrates over time. Water quality plays a role with our fertilizer program. Water quality might provide mineral elements we need. Some water can have toxic levels of certain elements, and we may have to do things to ameliorate that problem. The concept that's especially important, and people get a little bit confused a lot, and I hope I've added lots of videos and explanations in the learning unit, but this concept of alkalinity, water alkalinity. And it's just horribly unfortunate that we call water alkalinity, that we call it alkalinity, because we often confuse it with pH. In other words, a pH above 7 is often referred to as being an alkaline or basic pH. But when we're talking water quality, when we say alkalinity, we mean something different. Now, water that has a pH above 7 would have a pH that is basic or alkaline. But when we look at the alkalinity level of water, we're really looking at its carbonate or bicarbonate equivalent. Water can contain lots of different minerals, carbonates, bicarbonates, silicates, borates, phosphates, that act like bases. And when we are irrigating with that water, it's just like we're adding bases into the growing media each time we irrigate. It's just like if we put a bunch of lime in our water and you irrigate it with lime water, same kind of thing. So the pH of a water and the alkalinity, or the bicarbonate-carbonate equivalent of water, it's not necessarily the same. They're not always directly or proportionally the same. If we want to predict how using a certain water is going to affect the pH of our growing media or substrate over time, is it going to push it up, push it down, not have much of an effect? It's not really the pH value of that water we want to look at. It's the alkalinity level. The higher the alkalinity level, the greater the upward push, if you will, that water is going to have on the pH of your substrate. Because you're going to be dumping it, the higher it is, the more bases you're putting in every time you irrigate. The lower, the less effect it's going to have. And we care because, again, we can grow a longer-term crop, and every time we're irrigating, we're putting in bases. We might start out with a pH that's good, but those bicarbonates, carbonates, borates, all those bases in the water that give it, say, a medium or high alkalinity level, we keep putting those in, and that pH keeps ticking up over time. And before we get the crop out of the door, we might start running into a pH high enough that we start having problems. This can especially become a problem if not only do we have a medium or high alkalinity level in our water, but if we have a fertilizer that's a basic fertilizer. You learned about acidic and basic fertilizers in the last unit. A basic fertilizer like a calcium nitrate, nitrate-based nitrogen sources tend to push up the pH. A water source that has a moderate or high alkalinity, it's also going to be doing that. So they magnify one another. So for example, if you're fertilizing with basic fertilizers and you have a high alkalinity water, you can really start getting the pH on your growing media going up pretty rapidly and getting very high and causing big problems for you in a hurry. So that's why we really care about knowing what the alkalinity level of our water is and then making adjustments, which you'll read about if we need to make adjustments. So anyway, hopefully that's a little bit clearer for you as you go through there. If you're finding that, I've watched the videos and I've listened to everything and this is still confusing me, let me know, because I'm trying to think, maybe I could come up with a good video using M&Ms again to kind of help explain that yet another way. So go ahead and begin working on the irrigation and water quality learning unit.